the Trump administration and Harvard. That back and forth resuming tonight. How Homeland Security is now telling the Ivy they can't have any more international students on campus. But it also turns out it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3. Because a federal judge just put a halt to the administration's desire to shut down the education department. Tonight here on the Hill, what comes next with the plan to potentially reform your child's classroom? Also tonight, Senate bound. Are no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime around the corner? That quote unquote big beautiful bill with a big morning move. Why it's now one step closer to getting to President Trump's desk. But first tonight here from the Hill, it's what I was just talking to Connell about, right? The health of your kids. The MAHA movement, as it's known. Now laying out where it plans to go from here.
Let me say congratulations to the entire MAHA movement. This movement has become very hot. People are really, I tell you, they're going crazy over MAHA.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. The head of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, joins me live here in a moment on what the administration is trying to do next, essentially involving the health of our kids. We begin, though, tonight with our Robert Sherman live at the White House and this MAHA meeting today, the documents, the plans, and what they are calling, Robert, a call to action.
Yeah, Blake, I mean, at one time, now President Trump and Secretary Kennedy were competing against one another for the presidency. But today, side by side, announcing this Make America Healthy Again report and vowing to bolster the health of children, the president believes that this is an initiative he has the public's backing on. Take a listen.
There's something wrong, and we will not stop until we defeat the chronic disease epidemic in America. We're going to get it done. For the first time ever, this report examines some of the root causes that many believe are making our children sicker.
Both the president and Secretary Kennedy acknowledging that this element, focusing on health, potentially expanded the president's coalition during the campaign, which they believed helped the president secure victory in November, with the secretary chalking all of this up to what he calls common sense.
At its core, this report is a call to action for common sense. We've relied too much on conflicted research, ignored common sense, or what some would call mother's intuition. It's common sense that ultra-processed, nutrient-poor food contributes to chronic disease. It's common sense that excessive screen time and isolation lead to anxiety and depression, especially in children.
And the secretary says that the goal of all this is simple, to bolster the health and to extend the longevity of Americans' children and their lives. The president adding another element to all of this for his long-term plan is bringing down prescription drug costs. Blake?
Our Robert Sherman live tonight at the White House. Robert, thank you. Secretary Kennedy calling the MAHA Commission report a, quote, diagnosis, adding that he says the prescription will come in the next 100 days or so. So what's actually in the report? What does it say about the overall health of our kids? NewsNation Now weekend anchor Anna Koyman joins me live here on the Hill tonight. Anna?
Hi there, Blake. Good evening. The sickest generation. So that is what this report is calling children here in America. So the Make America Healthy Again Commission, what they've done is lay out the risks this group believes are causing chronic diseases like diabetes, asthma, and even cancer in kids across our country. So here are a few of the main culprits. Take a look. Ultra-processed foods, chemical exposures over medication of our children, also lack of physical activity, and corporate influence. Now, this report finds nearly 70% of calories in our kids' diets are coming from ultra-processed foods. The commission believes they are contributing to everything from obesity to ADHD to allergies to depression. Exposure to chemicals in adolescence can have a lasting consequence of all sorts of ranges to brain development during puberty. And there's concern that children are being overprescribed medications without first improving their nutritional and movement needs. Children aren't getting enough physical activity and And broadly speaking, Blake, they have traded in nature time outside for screen time inside. And finally, the report raises the alarm of big food, big chemical, and big drug companies using big money to sway America's laws. They say scientific research and even the way our doctors are educated in this country. So today at the White House, we saw their Health Secretary RFK Jr. saying independent studies should be valued more than studies paid for by these big corporations. Now, I have to say, as a women's fitness trainer myself, I was very encouraged to see this sedentary lifestyle being addressed, but I specialize in pre- and postnatal women, and I was very disappointed to see a lack of attention on postpartum women in this report. Supporting children should also mean supporting new moms. Tools are more easily available in countries overseas for concerns like pelvic floor dysfunction, postpartum depression, and education about how to take care of our new bodies during this stage. And just to underscore this, time is critical for our kids because it's at a stage where our little ones are imprinting from our behaviors as new moms the most.
All right. Our Anna Koyman live with us tonight. Anna, we'll see you later in the week, over on the weekend. Anna, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Joining me now here on the Hill, live from the North Lawn, he is the head of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary. First time here on the show, I believe. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Great to be with you.
So I read through this, Doctor, 72 pages. One of the things that stood out to me was there were over 500 citations, right? 522, I believe. You described it as a quote-unquote call to action. It read to me a little bit like a thesis. This is what we believe. This is what we think. This is what we believe the problems are and maybe how to address it. What actually comes next here?
Well, that's exactly right, Blake. There is a thesis here, and that thesis is that our entire focus of the U.S. healthcare system has been on the back end. It's been a reactionary system, and we need to be proactive and look at the root causes because we can't keep playing whack-a-mole. We've got a major crisis now with children. We've got a major chronic disease epidemic. 40% of kids have a chronic condition. 1 in 4 teen boys takes an ADHD medication. 1 in 4 teen girls has treatment for depression. The kids are not doing well in this country. We have record rates of all sorts of chronic diseases, and we have not been talking about food as medicine, the microbiome, the underlying root causes, the devices. And so that's where a lot of the focus is in this thesis, to convert us from a reactionary system to a proactive system looking at root causes.
What about, I guess, Doctor, what comes next, really, right? And what about enforceability? Because at the end of the day, you can list the stats off, you can put the report out, you can have a big meeting at the White House, but parents have the decisions over what their children do and don't eat and how they raise their children. So I guess the question is, what's the enforceability mechanism of any of this that whether it be over at HHS or the FDA that you go on from here with?
So this document is information to educate the public. It's also our agenda as a healthcare government administration and Health and Human Services under Secretary Kennedy. So that means we're going to be putting more research at the NIH into understanding root causes and why cancer is going up in young people, not just to study chemotherapy on the back end. It means Medicare is going to reevaluate their payment structure to take a look at paying for health, not just sickness. And it also means at the FDA, where I am, that we're going to look at food, not just drugs, because the F in FDA stands for food.
Yeah. So here was the president today on food dyes, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
We will not allow our public health system to be captured by the very industries it's supposed to oversee. So we're demanding the answers. The public is demanding the answers, and that's why we're here. Already we're phasing out 8 of the most common artificial food dyes.
There was that big announcement last month, I believe, on food dyes, right? And the administration's plan of getting petroleum-based food dyes out of the system, essentially. The food companies, the big food companies, have said that they are going to work with you on this. Do you believe at the end of the day, when we get into 2026 and you try to get a lot of this stuff out, that the food companies are actually going to take it out?
Well, they're already doing it, and we've been meeting with different food manufacturers, and they're giving us great promises of their goals and targets. They want a level playing field. They're watching public sentiment. Republican, Democrat, and independent moms showed up in high numbers to vote for President Trump over this issue of the MAHA agenda. And so you have 30 states now that either have laws on banning food dyes or are considering laws. And the food companies want a level playing field. They want a standard national timeline. They don't want to give their competitors an unfair advantage, and understandably so.
Commissioner, I think here's one of the realities. This involves President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, so there's a part of the country that's just going to discard this, right? And then because this involves President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, there's a part of the country that's going to say, okay, let me take a look and see what this is all about, right? I don't think that surprises you or anyone. But with this 70-page report, most folks aren't going to go through it. For those folks who say, I wonder what this is all about, and as we sit here at 6:10 on the East Coast and a lot of people are making dinner, either for themselves or for their kids, what's sort of the one thing that you think that they should take away from all of this today?
Well, look, can we love our nation's children more than we hate each other politically? I mean, this is a call to unite around medical science and look at root causes. Maybe we need to treat more childhood obesity with talking about school lunch programs, not just putting every young kid on Ozempic. Maybe we need to talk about the environmental exposures and chemicals that cause cancer, not just the chemo to treat it. So this is an entirely new framework. It's going to guide this administration as we, plan our actions in the agencies. And so we're already doing a lot of this. And this is to educate the public and let them know that we are delivering on a promise to look at the root causes of our chronic disease epidemic, which doesn't exist in other parts of the world. This is an American problem. It's been going on for 50 years. It's been getting worse. Different scientists have been waving the flag saying, hey, look at these root causes. Yeah. We have research on it. And that research comes to the forefront in this report.
I got to say, there's a lot of parents in this country who are totally apolitical, but obviously wonder what is in my child's food, and they're following a lot of this. Marty McCary is the commissioner over at the FDA, runs the FDA. I hope you come on back and join us once again here on The Hill. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much, Blake.
You got it. All right. Still to come tonight here on The Hill, the fate of the Department of Education. A judge now tells the administration it cannot shutter the department, and the Supreme Court tells one state to keep religion out of charter schools. Our Jesse Weber. Did you know that Jesse right now has one of the biggest podcasts in the country? Yes, he does. Look at that smile on Jesse Weber's face. Jesse joins us live on the other side of the break to break it all down. Plus, a victory for the president's quote-unquote big, beautiful bill passing by one vote in the House. But is the sprawling agenda already facing trouble in the Senate? And he's one of the smartest in the world when it comes to tech. Sam Altman, OpenAI. Did you hear what he is now saying about the future of AI? Welcome to Washington. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. We're back in 4 minutes here on The Hill. Stay with us. On NewsNation, 2 defeats for conservatives from the courts today regarding the future of education in this country. A district court judge in Boston blocking President Trump's executive order calling for layoffs and the closure of the Department of Education. And in a 4-4 tie, the High Court, the Supreme Court, ruled that Oklahoma cannot create the nation's first ever religious charter school funded by taxpayer dollars. The conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett did not participate in the decision. We're going to speak to the top educator in Oklahoma in a moment, but first, NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber. He has one of the top podcasts in the country, did I tell you? With us now here on The Hill. Jesse, thank you, sir. Hello.
Thanks for the promotion. Always appreciate it.
Of course, you got it. So let's just take the president at face value.
Yep.
He's going to go forward. He's going to try to shut down the Department of Education. He wants to do it at some point in the upcoming 3.5 years. Are the courts going to let him do it?
It's difficult to say, right? Because the Supreme Court, there is an argument that some of the conservative justices have been open to deferring to executive authority. They've been open to expanding the role, the authority of the president. But at the same time, what did you hear the objections today? It's what we've heard in the past, that this is really Congress's authority. Congress set up the Department of Education. When you're talking about funds, this is really Congress's avenue. And by the way, the judge wasn't convinced by the reasoning to do this. So under the law, you can't make make a decision that's arbitrary. And the argument was, you are trying to get rid of all of these people. Isn't that going to basically shutter the Department of Education? And the argument, well, no, it's going to make it more efficient. Okay. The court didn't buy it. So I think it might be an uphill battle, but it's kind of difficult to predict how the Supreme Court will rule once it goes to them, if it goes to them.
All right, so let's go out to Oklahoma, because there was a fascinating case there involving charter schools, a charter school rather, 4-4 tie in the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett not involved, but it basically said Oklahoma cannot use taxpayer funds for a religious charter school. But I'm wondering, what does that mean for the other 49?
So it's very difficult to know, because we don't know what the split was between the justices, although if I had to put money down, I would say Roberts sided with the idea that this is a problem. Why? So you have the Establishment Clause, which basically says the state can't establish a religion, can't favor religion, versus First Amendment, right? There can't be no religious discrimination. Now, the courts in the past have said if you're going to grant some sort of benefit or provide some sort of funds to a non-religious school, you have to do it for a religious school. But Roberts had said recently that what we're seeing in this case, basically using state funds, public funds to start a charter school that would, a Catholic church, it's too comprehensive. It's too much state involvement. So while we don't know exactly what the split is, I think that this is a case where it just goes beyond the line and is probably unconstitutional to allow state funds to be used for a charter school, a religious charter school.
We'll see if another state comes forward. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks so much.
But let's stay in Oklahoma. You probably know Ryan Walters. He's the top educator there in the state. He joins us here on the Hill quite frequently with us once again as his state was in the news today. Ryan, thanks for making time for us.
Of course. Thank you.
So the Supreme Court, it was a 4-4 tie, but because the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled against this, it essentially ruled against what your wishes, sort of what you were hoping would happen. Where do you go from here?
Well, first of all, it's really unfortunate. I mean, the only winners here are Satanists, atheists, and our Attorney General, Gentner Drummond. But here's where we go from here. We're going to be the state that brings it back up. We're going to continue fighting for parents to have these opportunities. The radical left continues to fight school choice and religious liberty. The reality is they met every single criteria of a charter school in Oklahoma, and our state Supreme Court, and now the U.S. Supreme Court, has said, well, I know, but they're Catholic, so the answer is no. That violates the Constitution. We're going to continue to fight for those religious liberties.
So here's the Attorney General. The decision is a tremendous victory for religious liberty. I hope the people of Oklahoma can rejoice that they will not be compelled to fund radical religious schools that violate their faith. That's your AG.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, like I said, he won, the atheist won, the Satanist won. But what about the Christians? What about people that are saying, hey, we signed up to help kids by providing them more opportunities? What about parents that say, we want our kids to go to this school because you know what? This Catholic school, we have seen them be successful time and time again.
What about those state funds being used to teach religion and whether or not that crosses the line, Ryan?
Well, parents choose. No kid has to go to the school. If a parent chooses to send their kid to that school, they'll get that type of education. That's what school choice is all about. And so we're going to continue to defend that in Oklahoma. I think it would be a tremendous school. We're going to continue to look at every avenue to get this case back before the Supreme Court. We could be looking at a constitutional amendment in our state to help our state bolster its argument moving forward.
Okay, I was looking at other states across the country, Ryan. For example, there are large Jewish populations in California and in New York, and they have charter schools there that teach Hebrew, for example. But they don't teach the religion. They don't go that far, which is where you're trying to go in Oklahoma. Why not use that model?
Well, because I think more models, the better, especially when, like we've required here, there's a criteria that shows a record for success. These schools have shown success. We've got parents all over the state that say, I want my child to be in a school like this. We don't have the funds to do it. We want the opportunity to. And we're saying, let's try it in a charter model. We're trying to challenge the status quo in education. Oklahoma, we're trying to be a leader in education. The United States, we should be looking better in education at our results. We should be thinking outside the box and trying to bring more options to parents, thinking more innovatively in the way that we're delivering education products to parents.
Supreme Court ruled against, but Ryan Walters with us tonight presenting his side. Thanks for being back with us once again here on the Hill. I have no doubt, Ryan, probably talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Got it. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. Passed by just one vote, but really that's all it needed. The Trump agenda moving from the House to the Senate. So what is actually in it? And will the Senate take a whole bunch of red ink to it? And the administration versus Harvard. I don't know what chapter they're on at this point, But that back and forth continued today when the Hill returns.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
That, of course, the House Speaker Mike Johnson getting a standing O from Republicans after a tedious night of negotiations overnight, a visit to the Hill from the president, and some Oval Office meetings. In a straight party line vote, Republicans passing many of President Trump's campaign promises in what is known as the quote-unquote one big beautiful bill. Now, at its core, the bill extends, for example, the 2017 Trump tax cuts. But it does add campaign promises as well, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. You've heard that for how long, right? That's just some of it there. It also makes changes to Medicaid and food assistance programs, reducing the number who are likely to be eligible at the federal level. Additional spending for the border and national defense also included. The White House today celebrating the bill, which now heads on over to the Senate.
Republicans in the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the most significant piece of legislation in years. As always, President Trump came in at the end to bring all sides together and get this deal done.
But a reminder here, the national debt right now is approaching, that's it right there, some $37 trillion. The bill is projected to add another $3.8 trillion over the next decade. I wanted to show you two data points tonight because you'll probably hear a lot of this come up in the conversation. This right here is our annual deficit since 2017, so the first Trump administration and the Biden administration as well. After the first Trump tax bill passed, deficits approached in 2019 almost $1 trillion under President Trump, and then, of course, COVID hit, right? Now, President Biden then sent it well north of $1 trillion, and the projections are trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see from here. Now, the White House is going to say that the bill will drive massive economic growth, and our gross domestic product, or GDP as it's known, could hit 4 or even 5% in the short run. But remember that the bill was passed in 2017, the first go-around. Here's GDP. The only time that we ever hit that number, that 4 to 5% range, including the first tax cuts, was the massive COVID rebound in 2021. Jeff Bezos was asked last year about how we go about tackling our national debt. Here he was.
You're going to solve the problem of the national debt by making it a smaller percentage of GDP, not by shrinking the national debt, but by growing the GDP. You have to grow the denominator. And that means you have to grow GDP at, 3, 4, 5% a year, and, let the national debt grow slower than that.
All right, joining me now here on the Hill, the congressman from the state of Florida, Mike Herodopoulos, a Republican who is on the Financial Services Committee. Hello, sir.
Great to see you.
Thanks for coming on in. Did you get what you want?
We did. We're moving forward. I think this is a morning in America once again. Speaker Johnson, the president, fantastic, bringing Republicans together. And isn't it refreshing to have a president who backs up his campaign promises? That's why I ran for office, and I'm excited to be here.
So a lot of it is in there, right? Extend the tax cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on if you buy an American-made car. But I look at the debt, Congressman, and it went up after the first tax cuts. GDP was what it was. And now I hear the White House saying it's going to be 4 or 5% in the short run. I just showed you the numbers. How do you get there?
Well, first of all, I think the only way you get there is by cutting taxes, incentivizing business opportunities, and that's what this bill does, without doubt. You've seen the president really promoting not just that, but also reducing the regulatory burden, which burst during the Biden years. And so when you unleash the American monster, which is, of course, the American economy in a positive way, you'll see these kind of growth numbers. And remember, the CBO numbers, which often squares...
You think it gets to 4 or 5%?
I think it'll get a minimum of 3%, and we can get 4 or 5% if we continue to send the right direction. And today's a good start, because what businesses are telling me every day for the last 4 or 5 months since I've been in office, certainty and stability on the tax structure.
Of course,
when you do that, the capital flies in, and you see the president running around the world and bringing trillions of dollars of investment home. That's how we get the 4 or 5%.
$52 trillion on the debt in a decade. How concerned are you?
I am very concerned. It's the reason I ran for office. My kids deserve the same opportunity that I was blessed with. But luckily, I come from the state of Florida. We're used to balanced budgets. We know how to make those strategic cuts and invest in people and in the economy. I think this can happen. We need the Senate to come along. They need to push this through and send that certainty and stability to the markets so they can get this thing going. Remember in 2017, they waited all the way to December, and you had that lag. Okay. The quicker we get this done, the quicker the markets react.
So you brought up the Senate. Here was John Thune, who's the Senate Majority Leader. Real quick, and then I'll get your reaction.
It's a good product to work with, but we want to get senators who want to write our own bill.
He basically said they're going to have their own bill potentially, and they're going to write some of it as well. If they start to put a whole lot of red ink to this, do you have any red lines of if they go somewhere, it doesn't sit well with you?
Well, I don't like to draw red lines, but I come from Florida where we balance budgets, and I did it when I was the president of the Senate, and we had an economic turnaround. What I think the American public cannot afford is a tax increase. They were hammered the last 4 years with inflation, gas, rent, food, etc. The one thing we can't have is more burdens going on their back with taxes. That will drive the markets into a very shallow position.
So that's you, if I'm translating here, basically saying we need to pass something.
Absolutely.
Because I guess you're fine with a little take here, maybe pull there, so long as something is passed so that taxes aren't increased.
I'm a former college professor. Politics is the art of the possible. Let's get something done. Let's push it forward. That's what's so great about President Trump. He's a deal maker. Mike Johnson is clearly a deal maker. He has been underestimated from day one. Again, he pulls it out of a hat because he listens to people before he makes decisions. It's very welcome in my political world.
You trust Mike Johnson, obviously. Do you trust John Thune?
I don't know John Thune. I can't speak for him.
Okay.
But
I didn't hear a yes there.
Hey, let's have a talk with John Thune. Happy to meet him, but I haven't met it yet. But I know Mike Johnson. I know Steve Scalise. I know our leadership team. We are committed to pushing this over the top because good policy is great. That makes great politics, not the other way around.
All right. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Great to see you.
From the state of Florida, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to swing over here. Hogan Gidley, former principal deputy press secretary in the Trump White House, with me now. Wanted to bring Hogan on as well because you're a line between the White House and that big, beautiful building, I guess, behind us. Did this end up where you thought and the speaker thought?
Yes, because we've been working on this from the House side for over a year. These conversations were had at a retreat back in the spring of last year, January of this year in Florida, because people wanted to make sure we were ready to go as soon as Donald Trump was ready to go, in coordination with not just the Senate and Leader Thune, but also the White House as well. We wanted to make sure everyone was in lockstep, understanding the political realities that exist in the House, where the margins are so tight and so slim, you have to make sure everything's airtight, and Mike Johnson was able to accomplish.
I heard a lot of noise in all of this, right? Public negotiating. Mm-hmm. I guess. What about over?
Not from the House of Representatives. Surely not.
I want to play you a quick soundbite from Senator Susan Collins over in the Senate side. Get your reaction on the other side.
I have said and made clear that I do not want to take away Medicaid benefits, which would not only put low-income families, but also our rural hospitals in particular.
She said she doesn't want to take away Medicaid benefits. The point is, there's going to be some negotiations over there in the Senate, and it's going to be folks like her, Lisa Murkowski, and maybe some others who might have some reservations here, Hogan.
Sure, but the House did not take away Medicaid benefits. In fact, they strengthened those benefits for Americans who need it and deserve it.
Well,
taking off 1.4 million illegal aliens, stealing from the American people on a healthcare system, not to mention Americans who can work but refuse to work.
So
that's a problem.
That's where I was going, is the work requirements, right? Some folks will look at that and say and with SNAP benefits, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe the states aren't going to be able to pick this up. This is some of the conversation. The reason why I bring it up is because this is probably some of the conversation that's going to happen in the Senate. I'll ask you the same question I asked the congressman, which is how much red ink is actually going to be acceptable for Mike Johnson and the folks in that building?
Well, listen, they've been in such lockstep to this point, working together along the way. Thune understands the issues we have on the House side. The Speaker understands what Thune's going to have to deal with as well. As always with these big things, this bill is large. It's in the title. It is beautiful. But there will be some problems on both sides. They're going to have to come together and fix it. Donald Trump, as the congressman said, the ultimate negotiator, the ultimate deal maker, he'll be in the mix with that Senate, with the Senate fight, as well as he was with the House one, too.
Hang around. Other side of the break. You'll stick with us. Hogan Gidley, thank you. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Tragedy outside the Capitol, a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C.
The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society.
A shooting leaves 2 Israeli embassy staffers dead. There is now a court hearing for the suspect, the very latest out of Washington. Full panel, other side.
On Balance tonight. Norm! Legendary actor Kelsey Grammer reflects on the life of fellow Cheers co-star George Wendt in a special and revealing conversation with Leland Vitterts. Tonight at 9/8 Central, only on NewsNation.
We've been advised that the defendant has appeared in court. He's had an attorney appointed. He's been advised by the judge that he could be punished by death or by life.
Reactions pouring in tonight over the 2 young Israeli embassy staffers fatally shot outside the Capitol Jewish Museum here in Washington, D.C. last night. The lone suspect just charged with murder, 31 years old. He chanted, "Free, free Palestine," after he was taken into custody. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were leaving a young diplomat's reception at the museum, organized by the American Jewish Committee, when they were ambushed. The White House addressing the tragedy earlier today.
President Trump is saddened and outraged over the brutal murder of 2 Israeli embassy staff here in Washington, D.C. last night. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were a beautiful young couple. In fact, we learned that Yaron was planning to propose to Sarah next week in Jerusalem. The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society.
Well, the Trump administration has taken aim at more than one prestigious university to that end regarding what's been described as their lack of action to combat anti-Semitism. Just today, for example, the administration halted Harvard's ability to enroll international students. And this would be a critical blow to funding at the country's wealthiest college, along with changing their admissions policies. Now, the administration has frozen or ended grants somewhere in the neighborhood upwards of $3 billion to Harvard. Now, given what we could all agree was the absolute horror on the streets of Washington, D.C. last night, are these the proper steps for the administration to be taking in the fight against anti-Semitism? Full panel here. With me now, Hogan Gidley is a special advisor to the House Speaker Mike Johnson. Taryn Rosencrantz, Democratic strategist. Denise Skitsum is a NewsNation contributor. And Naveen Nayak, president of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you all in. There's 2 stories here, obviously, but what about that question there of how to approach anti-Semitism in this country, Denise, given what we've seen over the last, call it, 18 months or so?
Well, it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach, and you have to attack anti-Semitism at its root. And the root right now seems to be more firmly rooted in college campuses than anywhere else. In fact, 66% of Jewish students have reported saying they don't feel comfortable exposing their Jewish identity on college campuses, and 83% of them saw an anti-Semitic event happen on their college campus. That's much higher than what you see in the general public. And even so, the ADL said that it was a 5% increase in anti-Semitic events in America over the past year, which is the highest that's ever been recorded. So we have to look at this not just at dealing as a one-off. This is something that has to be addressed systemically.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that I think students should feel safe on college campuses, and there shouldn't be what we saw last night in D.C. is horrifying. Yeah. And the fact that that is on the rise in the U.S. and globally right now should be something that everyone takes really seriously. And I think there's no question that this has to be a bipartisan approach. It's unfortunate that the president is going after Harvard on this, because you actually have a president at Harvard who recognizes there are some challenges with anti-Semitism and wants to do something about it. And the president actually hasn't made his demands on Harvard about anti-Semitism. It's been a real infringement on freedom, deciding how they hire, deciding what students get enrolled, deciding what they teach in the classroom. If you look at that 10 list of demands they made about Harvard, it didn't actually lead with anti-Semitism. That wasn't the point of it. This is a part of the retribution tour And I wish they didn't conflate those things.
Do you think this is a retribution tour or a reaction to what happened on college campuses, especially in the Ivies last year?
If they'd made the demands about anti-Semitism, that would have been a conversation that I think the universities would have had to engage in. Look at the 10 demands that Trump administration made of Harvard. They should not be getting, well, the conservative Republican Party used to believe in government staying out of private institutions. They're telling the institutions how to hire, who to enroll. Okay. I think that's a different conversation.
Yeah, stay out of government. The government, you want them out of private institutions, but they take the government's money. So there's going to be strings attached when you do that.
Less of it now.
And there should be much less of it thanks to Donald Trump.
Yep.
What's concerning to me is kind of the why here, because if this were an outbreak of chants and protests against gay students or black students, correctly so, there would be a national outcry to stop this immediately. For some reason, why are Jewish students always carved out of those certain protections? That concerns me greatly. But also, I do think there's a strain and thread within the Democrat Party that supports this type of behavior. Right behind you.
No, not what behavior.
No,
clarify behavior.
Hold on.
Clarify behavior.
This anti-Semitism is clearly supported by members on the left, whether it's Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Bernie Sanders calling out Benjamin Netanyahu, for example, by name, going overboard on that too. It's a real issue, and I'm glad someone's bringing attention to it.
Taryn?
I think saying things like that is the exact problem of why we can't get to where we need to be in this country. I'm a Jewish woman. I'm a Democrat. It breaks my heart that we're having that conversation, that you would say that hours after a tragedy of these two beautiful people being shot and ambushed in the way they were. No one deserves not to feel safe, and no one should be experiencing a 5% increase in anti-Semitism. And part of the reason we are is because this country has become so divisive, and it's heartbreakingly so, because our president cannot find the words to be kind. We are supposed to be humankind, and there is no part of this country. It brings me to tears, as you can see. There's no part of this country where we are talking to each other. This is an issue where we should be talking to each other how we do this the right way. And that's the truth.
I'll let you get back in here.
No, I mean, yes, we should be talking to each other. Of course we should. The question is, what are we trying to sell to each other? And right now, I think the left is clearly on the side of some really horrible thought processes. There's some hatred. You see this on these college campuses, and I'm over there all the time. I'm dealing with these congresswomen. I'm seeing what they're saying out publicly. It's extremely dangerous. It's extremely divisive, and I would call it disgusting as well. An entire segment of the population being targeted, and for some reason it's okay because they're Jewish. I don't understand.
Do you think that it's not the same when we have a female member of Congress chasing a woman who is not our trans woman of Congress into the bathroom because she thinks that the trans woman of Congress, member of Congress, is using the wrong bathroom?
Yeah. No, it's not even close.
But my point is, we're targeting people. We're not being kind. That's why why are we raising the temperature of this country? Let's bring it back down. We're talking about murder. We're talking about things that are where we have a chance to do the right thing instead of using it as an opportunity.
I think it's time to stop the violence. I think that's what I is actually taking the steps
100%
to end the violence, and that requires bipartisan support.
Absolutely.
But it also requires both parties calling out hatred wherever it is. And what I'm not seeing, I think AOC did a great job today coming out and saying this is wrong. Good for her. I commend her as a Republican. But where's the rest of your party when it comes to what's happening at Harvard? Why is it Republicans that had to bring out what happened at Harvard? Why is it always one side? Wait, if you really want to be kind, then you stop the violence first, and then you create a space where people can talk.
I'll give Naveen the last word.
I think this is the way the conversation always goes this way. I think violence is the right line for everyone to draw, right?
Sure.
I think there's a debate about protest and the right place there, and I think there is a conversation that should be uniting about anti-Semitism. That is not a conversation the Republican Party has wanted to join until it was in elite universities. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. Donald Trump sat and had dinner with a Holocaust-denying anti-Semite, Hogan. Did you call that out? Did you?
Always.
You called out Donald Trump having dinner with a leading Holocaust denier? No. This is the point. There are people in both parties who share these anti-Jewish sentiment. And if we're not going to call it on both sides and just say that it's Democrats, we're not actually trying to have a conversation.
I think it's rich to call out people that you don't know about things that you don't know what they've done and say, did you really? I think we should all be encouraging each other to do the right thing.
Sitting down
Hold on. You had your chance.
All right.
Well, no, I'm going to lower the
temperature, and we're going to leave it there. But it's part of the discussion, and we should keep those two and their families
always
in our thoughts. Other side of the break. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. You see what's on here on the table? I'm going to explain to you on the other side of the break why something else might be here on the table. I don't know, in the upcoming years or so. And what it has to do with that company right there. Plus, still to come here on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she'll be talking to Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, about this very topic. That's coming up in minutes here on News Nation. My take, other side of the break. I'll explain what I mean about the table and everything. Time for my take tonight. So how about this question? Do you want a third device in your everyday life? Now, chances are you spend a decent portion of your day on your phone or at your computer, right? Well, now the man who helped Steve Jobs develop Apple's most famous product says having a third device with you is only a matter of time. Johnny Ive just had his company acquired for $6.5 billion, purchased by Sam Altman's ChatGPT, the same Altman who's recently been seen at the White House. And here's the thing. Nobody outside of a very select crew has any idea what the new innovation is. But here's what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. They say, quote, the product will be capable of being fully aware of a user's surroundings and life, will be unobtrusive and able to rest in one's pocket or desk, and would be a third core device. Now, the difference between this and your phone and computer is that TBD name mystery project will largely be AI. Now, think about it here for a second. 20 years ago, I was playing Snake on my Nokia cell phone, right? And today, in the full time it takes me to read this whole take, I could have ordered a car to pick me up and sent food to my front door for when I get home. Now, some of you might be thinking, yeah, weren't we supposed to be wearing all sorts of glasses with GPS and internet and all these sorts of things? And I get that point, but hopefully, if I'm still sitting at this desk in another 20 years, probably with less hair, a few more wrinkles, with all the brain power of Altman and Ivey and all the money involved, it makes me wonder if a third device, one that we cannot envision now but is at the forefront of AI, will soon be